Welcome to the final days. Today is May 24, 2019. Today we will be viewing several different sky and space anomalies not mentioned by mainstream media. The purpose of this channel is to show the viewers that we are living in the very last days according to the Holy Bible, and to explain why this is very good news and cause for celebration. Explain later in this video. The images we will be viewing were obtained within the past 10 days from the Federal Aviation weather cameras in Alaska and Canada. Each image is 10 minutes apart from the next, such as the video that's playing now, which we will discuss in detail in a couple minutes. In some of these pictures, you will see a black dot in the center of the sun, which casts its own reflection upon the water, proving that it's an actual piece of equipment and not a camera or lighting issue. This black dot is only viewable in a direct line of sight and not at an angle. That's why you won't see it in every image. NASA launched this black dot equipment very close to the Earth, but it tracks in perfect synchronization with the sun. It's actually very small, but is capable of producing a circular glare thousands of miles in diameter, as seen here from the Scammon Bay, Alaska weather camera. However, the equipment producing this enormous glare is small enough to completely disappear behind a thin flagpole. We will see in just a minute what happened to the real sun, but for now, it's important that you realize that our real sun could never disappear behind a thin flagpole or a tiny bird feeder post, such as what's happening here on the east-facing weather camera located in Prince Rupert, British Columbia in Canada. The real sun could never disappear behind a thin bird feeder post. When the sun disappeared behind these small posts, it had actually gone behind a dark nebula, only visible from the far north. When the sun goes behind objects such as the dark nebula, viewed from Attawapiskat, Ontario, the artificial glare still tracks with the sun so that it's not obvious that the sun isn't within view. The sun has disappeared behind the nebula when it appears to suddenly shrink down to 1/5 its size, and the sky and landscape suddenly darken. As you can see, the artificial glare is no match for the real sun, but it does give the illusion that the real sun is still shining. To see more on this dark nebula that has recently come into our solar system, watch my April 15 video and several other previous videos. You might be wondering why someone would want to give the illusion that the sun is still visible when it's actually not. Untold trillions have been spent on the technology to hide the inbound planetary system, which has brought with it a dark nebula into our solar system. The reason that trillions have been spent to hide this celestial system is because the enemies of Christ do not want you to know how close we are to the end. The enemies of Christ do not want you to turn your life over to Christ while you still have time. Instructions are at the end of this video telling you how to accept Christ into your life. Several days ago, the southeast-facing camera in Red Dog, Alaska, captured what appears to be NASA's manufactured light in a possible state of malfunction, flashing as it crosses the sky. Some of you may have seen this happen before. When viewing this older footage from the south-facing camera in Anchorage, Alaska, the sun appeared to flash wildly as it crossed the sky. Of course, had this been our real sun, we would all have been burnt to a crisp within minutes. Something else very noticeable and unusual about our sunlight is the dangerously high levels of A, B, and C ultraviolet, UV, radiation, C being the most dangerous of all. We've never had ultraviolet C at ground level in past known history. I noticed that this white Velcro, when outside, actually looked purple. I had put Velcro on my dog's harness and noticed that it turned purple while we were outside walking. The outside light causes the Velcro to have a purple cast to it. However, when indoors, the Velcro is completely white even when held up to a light bulb. The change from white to purple is what happens when you hold the white Velcro under a black light, which puts out only ultraviolet light. This is an indication of how extremely high our ultraviolet light is. This is not normal. The YouTube channel Mr. MBB333 provides regular reports on UV levels. According to his latest report a couple days ago, the meter readings are in the mid-40s. This one says 44, and the next one will say 45. This is unbelievably high. This is dangerously high. Meteorologists are not even permitted to report UV numbers this high. So you won't find this information on mainstream news or in weather reports. Even organizations such as Willy Weather can only show a chart on the very high UV levels, but not broadcast the actual number. As you can see from this morning's Willy Weather chart, the UV level is way beyond the extreme category. It's in a category for which there is no description. And it's around 8 a.m. in the morning. Imagine what the chart is going to show in 4 or 5 more hours at high noon or 1 p.m. Dr. Claudia Albers, an astrophysicist with a YouTube channel, explains why these levels of radiation will continue to rise and that life on Earth cannot survive the radiation for more than a few years. In several of her videos, she explains that our solar system now contains lots of stellar cores which have siphoned energy from our sun as they pass by. This has affected our UV levels. She explains that stellar cores are spent stars, burned out stars, which is why we are seeing lots of celestial objects on these Alaskan and Canadian weather cameras. All of the clear images of these celestial objects are removed from the weather cameras before the public has access. I only get what they miss. I'll play through this footage that came from the east-facing weather camera located in Chandler Shelf, Alaska, and then after playing through it exactly as it came off the camera, I'll add some contrast so that you can see the celestial objects that the camera has captured. If the contrast is added only to the specific part of the photo where it's needed, it works much better. That's the reason for the odd-shaped areas of contrast here. We see 2 cloaked celestial objects, blurred by technology and also faded in the atmospheric chemicals. We know these can't be lens flares of the sun because there are more than one. Additionally, they are reacting to NASA's light. The light, if you'll notice, partially illuminates these celestial objects. A camera-produced lens flare can never become partially illuminated. Notice how these celestial objects grow lighter as NASA's glare approaches them. Notice the pink reflection of the craft in the bottom right corner, which is always present during either an eclipse or a near eclipse. We can't see the craft in this footage, but we will see it in several different clips later in this video. If I avoid getting glare inside the area where the contrast is, it works much better. Notice how NASA's circular glare leans toward the celestial object in order to conceal it within the area of glare. As NASA's light crosses to the right side of the screen, it stretches to engulf another object in glare, which was not previously visible in this footage. Jesus tells us in the Bible, Book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 25, we will see signs in the sky when the end is near. The east-facing camera in Chokyitzuk, Alaska, shows a black beam being emitted in preparation for an eclipse. We've seen this black beam many times, and it always originates from the black dot. Apparently, it is some sort of signal, because after the black beam, the odd-shaped pink reflection of the craft, which we'll see later, is always visible in the lower right side of the screen. During these images, the celestial object is successfully hidden from view. The northeast-facing camera in Arctic Village shows several colorful reflections of the concealment equipment. One of the colored reflections is created by the craft, which is marked in this photo. As the sun moves to the right of the screen, the reflections all move in the opposite direction, staying in line with the craft and the black dot in front of the sun. Here, after the sun has moved to the right side of the screen, we see the bottom part of the shade umbrella being towed by the craft. This umbrella prevents NASA's circular glare from lighting up the celestial object, which helps to conceal it from public view. Here's a better view of the large umbrella being towed in order to shade the celestial object from view. Here we see the craft, which is towing this mammoth object. The black outline helps to see it for anyone whose screen may not have enough contrast. We've seen this craft many times towing this reddish-colored umbrella, which has a large red oval piece between the craft and the umbrella. More often, the umbrella is not visible except for the red oval tongue-shaped piece. This celestial system will make its closest pass to Earth during the biblically foretold time of the 7-year Great Tribulation, which is very close. The north-facing camera in Beaver, Alaska, demonstrates how effective the atmospheric chemicals are at hiding large celestial objects from view. The sun is just rising up in the morning. These images don't show anything terribly obvious at first glance. But after some contrast has been applied, a very textured, fast-rotating celestial orb becomes visible. We know this can't be a lens flare of the sun because we can see its rotation as we move through these images. Our sun only rotates once every 27 Earth days. Here is another demonstration of the effectiveness of the atmospheric chemicals. We can see the reflections of the craft and other eclipse concealment equipment, but not until the very last 4 frames can we actually see the celestial object that's being hidden from public view. Only with contrast applied can most people actually see the celestial object. Look closely, and you can also see the pink dot, which is the craft, again, that we've been seeing. The east-facing camera in Esther-Dome, Alaska, shows the same celestial object, very faded in the atmospheric chemicals, and also shaded from the glare produced by NASA's manufactured light, which tracks in synchronization with the sun. Once again, some contrast brings out more details of this object. Again, we can see that this red sphere is rotating rather quickly. Thus, we know it cannot be a lens flare of the sun. These are more signs of the end times described in the Bible. Here are the same images close up. This allows us to see the enormity of this celestial object when compared with the mountains and landscape below. We've seen this object many times. It's one of a set of 3 celestial objects that are gravitationally bound, always seen traveling together. On rare occasions, we can actually see the other 2 orbs traveling with this one because they are further away and more faded by the atmospheric chemicals and also the blurring technology. This trio of celestial objects was featured in my April 26 video. Here's a couple frames from that southwest-facing camera in Kasagluck, shown in the April 26 video, where 3 orbs were viewable with contrast. Once again, we see that the craft is always present near any celestial orbs in these images. The northeast-facing camera in Nenana, Alaska, captured a white orb that we are starting to see more frequently. With contrast applied, this sphere becomes very visible. This white orb is always very blurry, and it always becomes highly illuminated when NASA's manufactured light approaches it. We know this can't be a lens flare of the sun because it reacts wildly to NASA's glare equipment and becomes very bright as NASA's circular glare passes over it. As we move through these images, notice how NASA's light passes in front of this celestial object and the real sun passes behind it. All of the foreign celestial objects we have been viewing are all between the sun and the earth. As mentioned earlier, untold trillions have no doubt been spent to keep the masses from knowing how close to the end we are. We are seeing the effects of this invading planetary system. Our jet stream has become fragmented, which has cascaded into other problems worldwide, causing unusual and extreme weather in different parts of our world, of which only a fraction is mentioned on mainstream media. Earthquakes are up more than 240% in the last few years. Volcanic activity has soared to an all-time high. Our Gulf Stream has either stopped or nearly stopped, causing unprecedented cold in countries along the Atlantic in Great Britain. Mainstream media hasn't mentioned that GPS has had to be recalibrated across the globe over the past couple years. Mainstream media doesn't mention that 4,400 mass animal die-offs occurred over the past 7 years. Desert areas are seeing massive flooding, never seen before. Ultraviolet radiation is at hazardous levels. Mainstream media fails to mention the receding ocean water which has been occurring since August of 2017. Mainstream media has failed to report many of the asteroids that have fallen to Earth, mostly in unpopulated areas, fortunately, but in unprecedented numbers. Many of them are now orbiting Earth. One enormous asteroid in a proven failing orbit was featured in my March 6 video. The list of effects on Earth of this foreign planetary system goes on and on, the results of which are described in detail in the Bible's book of Revelation, an account of the last days. The southeast-facing weather camera at McKinley Park shows another very large orb, only partially visible through the clouds at first, but after a few frames the clouds clear long enough to get a view of this celestial object. This object has been blurred by technology. Notice how absolutely enormous this object is when compared with the mountains and landscape below. This is what is being hidden with blurring technology, atmospheric chemicals, and hundreds of undescribably huge lenses in space that bend light and perform other tasks to conceal this foreign celestial system. The southeast-facing camera in Lloydminster, Alberta in Canada shows a sun halo. These daily sun halos are always under heavy cloud cover because every effort is made to hide them from view. The reason they need to be hidden is because sun halos are supposed to be a very rare occurrence. Now they are an everyday occurrence, but can only be seen through heavy cloud cover. The southeast-facing camera in Nome, Alaska captured something large that NASA's circular glare is obviously reacting to. Thus, we know it can't be a lens flare. Notice how the manufactured light reaches down toward these two spherical objects. The close-up images provide a better view of this enormous object. And in the last couple frames, we can see that there are actually two of them close together. These are more signs of the end days as described in the Bible. The southeast-facing camera in White Mountain, Alaska, shows something large that NASA's equipment illuminates as it passes over it. Thus, it can't be a lens flare. Notice how the light reaches downward and streaks across this spherical object. The west-facing weather cam in Golovin, Alaska captured an odd, dome-shaped glow on the western horizon. Now realize that this camera is facing west, and it's around 8:30 in the morning local time. Thus, we are looking in the completely opposite direction of the sun. The sun is to your back, and the dome-shaped glow is in the front of you, facing the western horizon. These images take place over a 5-hour range. Notice that the dome shape does move slightly to the right as the day goes by. It's not stationary. Then, just before 3:30 in the afternoon, it disappears behind the horizon. The only explanation I have for this phenomenon is that it is yet another biblical sign of the last days. As mentioned before, this system will make its closest pass to Earth during the Great Tribulation, which is very close. But all of this is actually good news and cause for celebration, because Jesus has promised to remove his faithful followers from Earth before the major destruction. This is commonly called the Rapture, which will take place quickly and quietly just before the Great Tribulation begins. The New King James Version of Luke chapter 21, verse 36 reads, "Watch therefore and pray always, that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass." Jesus is referring to the Great Tribulation, and he's saying that those who are counted worthy will escape all of God's wrath. To be counted worthy, we must be living in holiness. A link in the description box below discusses what holiness is and how to achieve it. The reason that your eternal soul has been sent into this fallen world is so that you can choose to love Christ out of your own free will and live according to that love. This is the only reason we are here in these temporary flesh bodies. These next few screens will tell you how to accept Christ into your life. Simply pause the screen if you need more time to read the text.